Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. I hope you are more appreciative of the new time. This is the time that we, please God, will be able to stay with now that hopefully we're getting back to some type of normality. I hope everyone is getting excited about things opening up and getting back to the way things were. So let's have a look. There were long lines outside every barber and hairdresser this morning. So people are very, very excited. So let's have a look at the Mishnah. We discussed about an argument that was for the sake of heavens, and an argument that was not for the sake of heavens. We then spoke about Yehuda ben Batema, who spoke about the alacrity and the zeal that one should approach life and approach mitzvot with. Okay. The next Mishnah, which we're up to, says as follows: Hu Omer, he used to say, "As ponim legehenim, v'boishes ponim legan Eden." The brazen goes through Gehenna, but the shamefaced go to the Garden of Eden. What does that mean? So if you are somebody who is brazen, right? I can't think of another word for brazen at the moment, but there is an arrogance, right? There is, you are completely indifferent. You have no shame, right? So a person is the opposite, right? Somebody who's brazen, they do not care what anybody else thinks or anybody else does. And therefore, when it comes to doing the wrong thing, you don't have any shame. You're not embarrassed. You don't care what other people think. So that would lead a person down a slippery slope to eventually being in in Gehenna, right? Not in heaven. Whereas a person who is shamefaced, right, would be fearful of those around them, which would act as a stopgap measure, as well as, for example, the fear of heaven, which would be on them, which is going to make sure that they do the right thing. If you're brazen, then you don't care, right? You'll throw your rubbish down, you go over red lights, you won't worry about kosher, you won't worry what people think of you, and all of a sudden your behavior is completely off the wall. So then he goes on to say, may it be the will of your God, okay? Hashem Elokeinu v'Elokei Avotenu, the God of our forefathers. And remember, this is meant to be ethical teaching, so it's quite we don't find this in any other Mishnah. What's it saying? He says a prayer, a beautiful prayer, that the temple should be rebuilt and give our portion in your Torah, right? One thing leads to the other. That if we are acting appropriately, then that will lead to a rebuilding of the temple. We all know, that we can live in two worlds: the world that God created or the world that we made. The world that God created was the most idyllic, beautiful world of like the Garden of Eden, right, where people are considerate and compassionate and sensitive and God-fearing. Or we can live a world of absolute chaos, where everyone gets angry very easily and they're egocentric and everything else. That's really what he is saying, okay? So let me go on to the next Mishnah, the one after that, and it says as follows. Ben Barbag Omer, Ben Barbag said, Hafachba nafachba de kula ba. Good morning, all those. Thank you for your good wishes and welcome back to the new time. And please God, this will be the time the traffic was okay. I managed to get back to Mervyn, to Rachel, to Estelle, to Michael, to Harry, to Alan. Good morning. Yes, a civilized time, Alan. Richard and Caroline. Chodesh Tov, a good Chodesh. It should be a gezinta month, a good month. A month when we have Parnasa, Hatzlacha, tremendous success in all our endeavors, good health for everyone. And please God, as things open up, we hope that people will act in a responsible fashion so that things can continue to open up and we can have greater prosperity, happiness, and success for the whole community. Ben Bagbag, one of the most famous statements in Ethics of the Fathers. He says as follows, listen to this one. Hafachba nafachba de kulaba. If you turn it over, delve into the Torah, turn it over, everything is there. He says, if you look deeply into it, grow old and grey over it, and do not stir from it, for you can have no better portion than it. Then he says, Ben Hayes says, the reward is in proportion to the exertion. In other words, we have a tendency, we look at it as the history book chronicles Aesop's fables. That's very much, I think, by the way that many come along and they say that is what the Torah is about. It's got some laws, it's got some stories. That's not what the Torah is. Nafoch ba nafoch ba kula ba. We just said everything is in the Torah. The Almighty created. How did He create the world? Whenever you build anything, you need a blueprint. You need a map. You need a plan. The blueprint for the creation of the world was the Torah. In other words, everything is in the Torah because the world was created through the Torah. Difficult concept for us to understand. But again, if we imagine an architect and you imagine in the neighborhood, Holden Road or wherever you want, and you've got somebody who is, they're making a building, okay? And as they're making the building, you can see them looking at plans, right? Those plans, it is essential in order for the building to come out the way it was conceived, it must be that they follow the plans to the nth degree. And therefore, the world was created through the perception of the Almighty. And therefore, everything is in the Torah. And there's amazing stories that I know that no one, people are going to struggle to believe it, but there are some wondrous stories. Remember, obviously, the deeper perception, the more that you are able to see about life in the Torah. One of the most famous stories, I guess, is about the Chazon Ish, who was the predominant leader of Jewry around the world, but in particular in Israel in the 1960s, 50s, 60s. He was the go-to man. Even the prime ministers would go to visit with him and talk with him. Anyways, there was once somebody who had people came to him for all types of advice. He was known as, a very saintly man. Anyways, so on one occasion, somebody came and he said to him, I've got a tumor in my brain. And he asked him, well, what are the doctors planning? And they told him what the doctors were planning, but they didn't hold up much hope. And he drew out, the Chazon Ish, a completely different way for the procedure to be done. And they listened to him. They looked at it again and said, yes, we could actually do it that way. And they reconsidered their original plan of action, which was very risky. And they went with the Chazon Ish. And of course it was successful, and the man lived to tell the tale. And afterwards he came back to the Chazon Ish and he said to him, wow, you're like a Moshe Rabbeinu, you're like a prophet. And he said, not at all. Everything is in the Torah. I've just studied a lot. It's life experience. The wisdom of life is all in the Torah. So obviously, and the more we delve into it, the more we are able to understand about life, about ourselves, and about the world. I think that's the passing message for us today as we head into Rosh Chodesh, that we should, as we are doing, is to delve more and more into it. The more we learn about things, the more we are able to immerse ourselves in our learning, the greater perception, the greater sensitivity that we're going to have towards life and towards other people in particular. So we're going to conclude with a memorial prayer, with the Refuah Shlema prayer. We will back to full. Let me just see if I've got my sheet. Yes, I do. So before that, I know Estelle's on, which is particular to always remind me, Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He causes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even as I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You set a table before me in the presence of my adversaries. You anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows, and may only goodness and kindness pursue me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord for the length of days. Memorial prayer. Adon Olamim Zachoes Nishmais. Benjamin Akiva Ben Shlomo, Lemas Bible, Yaakov, Stephen, David Ari, Tzibora Fegel, Bazrubin Baruch, Okazime, Shalom Ben Eli Ben Bas Bible from Moshe Shabbos, Yaakov Shmokel Ben Senach, Yimei Achia Ben Moshe Eliezer, Sarah Marka, Bas Ben Yom Shalom Achia Ben Yeshua Levi, Avram Mordechai Ben Moshe Katna, Arya Ben Shimon, Shalom Cholilaman, Bergan Eden, Temenu Chotzam, Lachim Balarachamim, Yasirein Veseisa Kanafavli Alamim, Veyetzav Vesochesa Shasam Adonai Nachlasam, Yanuchu Bishlomish Gavam, V'nomar Amen. Lastly, Refuah Shlema prayer. There are still so many unwell. There was illness before COVID. There's illness after COVID. And I know some people have side effects. So also from the vaccination. So we'll make a refuah shlema. Misha be'achavasenu Avram Yisrael Yaakov Moshe Aaron David Shlomo Yivarach Rapes Acholim Babu Shana Mispalim Babu Ram Chazar Kadosh Baruch Hu Yimalei Rachim Aleichem Lachmo Leposam Yishlach Lehem Refuah Shlema Nishmaim L'chol Reim B'sos Shachar Yisrael Refuah Tzanefesh Refuah Tzaguf Hashav Gizman Karev and Amar Amen. Just a couple of events to draw your attention. I would really, really urge you to come to these events. For the ladies, there's the Rosh Chodesh event, 7:30 p.m. on Zoom with Gila tonight. The event has been emailed out. And secondly, this Wednesday, we have the KLBD Roadshow with a quiz with prizes to be won. It has been a sensation. And please, please, please come along this Wednesday. I'll be on it as well. Details will be emailed out tomorrow and on Wednesday. Put it in the diary, 8 o'clock this coming Wednesday night as well. So 7:30 tonight, Rosh Chodesh for the ladies, and 8 p.m. for the whole community on Wednesday. Have a great day, have a great week, and a good Chodesh. Please God, it'll be a good month of parnos, of livelihood, of sustenance, of health and happiness for everyone. All the very best. Look after yourselves. Ignore the times on the flyer, the new ones being